Thank you for tuning into Roll Call. The movie you selected is El Cantante.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Roll Call, the show where two childless millennials gush over movies and follow an actor's journey from their early years throughout their blockbuster hits.
Because if you don't know, now you know. We miss Blockbuster.
I know. I would shimmy, shake, and salsa my little butt down to Blockbuster just to feel something again.
Oh my God. I always love your one-liners because I try not to read them before we record. So genuine laughter here. What's up, guys? I'm Bria. And watch out, J-Lo, because is Marc Anthony a triple threat?
Dun, dun, dun. And I'm Simone. And Jennifer isn't just out here acting anymore. She is out here producing.
You gotta put some swag on that. She ain't out here acting anymore. She out here producing. Like I sound like Pauly D from Jersey Shore. All right, guys. So today we will be chatting about none other than, if you don't know by now, Jennifer Lopez in the 2006-2007 biopic El Cantante. So I just realized that this movie was released at the Toronto Film Festival in 2006.
Yes.
But it wasn't released until 2007 as like a regular movie release, I'm guessing.
Yes.
So unfortunately, I did pop culture for 2006.
Oh, okay.
And not 2007. All right. I am trying to get better at us not spending too much time on pop culture, but you know, it is what it is. So yeah, let's see what it do, baby, in 2006.
All right.
All right. So Facebook opens to anyone over 13, and Twitter, my favorite app, well, TikTok too now, but Twitter, OG app, is launched in 2006. So major change alert. Yes, our lives have forever been changed because of that.
Yeah, I thought it was earlier for some reason. But I guess now that we have the biggest draw of Twitter is being able to do it on your mobile phone and like have a little website web link where people can just read your random thoughts and see what you had for dinner that night.
Fun fact, I used to tweet via text. So shout out to any Twitter users who used to do that, where you would text your tweets to a number and they would post on your Twitter account via that.
Oh.
What a time, tweeting in class. All right. Let's get some angel music going here. Steve Irwin, TV's Crocodile Hunter, was killed by a freak stingray accident in 2006. I hope that stingray knows what he did. So RIP Steve, and kudos to his family too for still carrying on his legacy, because I every now and then will flip to the Animal Channel and you know, Bendy and his son are on there. And I'm like, oh, Bendy has a baby now? Like, oh my God. Woo!
Yeah.
All right.
Just the whole, I mean, I'm sitting here in silence, shaking my head. The whole Irwin family is so very much loved. And Steve, to this day,
they're so pure.
Very much loved. They're great. They're great people. They have a good cause. Angel from above, Steve, we think about you all the time.
All right. So in other news, Pixar got sold to Disney in 2006 for you Disnerds out there.
Mm-hmm.
And also in Disney news, Disney cuts ties with McDonald's. RIP to the fry cart.
Oh yeah, you oldie fried cart and like the one in Frontierland, yeah, like the Pioneer McDonald's wagon fries or whatever.
Yes, but mainly they're cutting ties with McDonald's to curb childhood obesity by not partnering for Happy Meal toys, which I know I definitely was all about Happy Meal toys as a kid. So the last Happy Meal toys at that time, which they're now back. So I guess that cause went out the window. But the last Happy Meal toys of that time were for Cars and Pirates of the Caribbean.
Huh. Wow, what a combination.
Yes. So in other news, very worldly news, NASA tried it and they demoted Pluto to a dwarf planet from a planet in 2006.
Damn! Oh my God, that was also news. We all felt so disrespected for Pluto. Like, we felt so angrily about that decision. And I say we as just a collective people. I remember being in high school and talking about that, and people were just like, come on, man, like, give Pluto a break.
I mean, it's true though. I feel like, yeah, we have like a soft spot for the small little tiny planet that could.
The underdog. It's the underdog of planets.
So Simone, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you remember Easy Squeeze ketchup?
Of course.
So Easy Squeeze ketchup came in a variety of colors, most infamously purple and green a la Shrek.
See, yes.
But it gets discontinued in 2006.
Probably for the best. I mean, if we're trying to curb childhood obesity, then, you know, let's also get rid of the ketchup that makes your shit like a muddy rainbow color. So...
Oh my God. All right. So in celebrity breakup news, we have Brit and K-Fed are broken up. Bobby and Whitney break up in 2006. Paul McCartney and Heather Mills. And Charlie Sheen and Denise motherfucking Richards breaks up in 2006. So nothing really argent except Britney and K-Fed, but some very iconic toxic couples.
Yeah, definitely.
So in movie news, in movie news, I just wanted to put this little gem in there. Crash won the Best Film Oscar. So
I think we had that in our list of movies last in For an Unfinished Life because it had debuted in 2005, but then would have won the Oscar in 2006. Yeah.
In some J-Lo news, I watched a clip of her introducing, because I just YouTube like J-Lo 2006, and she introduces the video of the year at the VMAs. Simone, would you like to guess who won?
Is it a rock band or is it is it Green Day?
No.
White Stripes?
Nope.
Coldplay?
Best one guess left.
Who had the best music video, a rock artist?
You're gonna flip.
Is it Red Hot Chili Peppers?
And it is Panic at the Disco. I knew you were gonna.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Is it for I Write Sins and Not Tragedies?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I was very surprised too. I was like, what?
I think they performed that year, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember being very disappointed because it was like all auto-tuned. Brendan Urie was really struggling to like hit the notes. But to be fair, they were young. They were like literally into the thick of it as like young, like they were 19, 20. This was probably their first like big performance, and they just didn't really know, like it all happened really fast. So looking back on it, I give them a break, but in the time I was like, oh, that's disappointing to see.
Oof.
Like CD quality sounds way better.
I hate that. I'm gonna have to watch that performance now. But moving on in music news, J-Lo is on this little ditty with LL Cool J called Control Myself, which upon re-listening and rediscovering, I'm like, wow, this is one of those songs you're like, I liked this. And now it's stuck in my head since I've been looking at my notes. And so I guess I know why. It's very catchy, but not a highlight in my opinion. But anyways, I'm going to riddle through all the number one songs of 2006. So buckle up your seatbelts. All right. So starting from December 30th, 2005 to January 2006 and going through. Here we go. Because I couldn't pick because there's just so many gyms and I feel like it shapes the year really.
You're going to just read through. I'm not going to react to it. Okay. All right. Go.
Don't Forget About Us, Mariah Carey. Laffy Taffy, D4L, Grills, Nelly featuring Paul Wall, Ali, and Gip. Check on It, Beyonce featuring Slim Thug. You're Beautiful, James Blunt. So Sick, Neo. Temperature, Sean Paul. Bad Day, Daniel Powder. SOS, Rihanna. Ride In, Chameleonaire featuring Crazy Bone. Hips Don't Lie, Shakira featuring Wyclef Jean. Do I Make You Proud, Taylor Hicks. Promiscuous, Nelly Furtado featuring Timbaland. London Bridge, Fergie. Sexy Back, Justin Timberlake. Moneymaker, Ludacris featuring Pharrell. I Wanna Love You, Akon featuring Snoop Dogg. And Irreplaceable by Beyonce.
To the left, to the left.
And that song was definitely probably like, I think I saw somewhere it was like one of the biggest songs of that year. But 100%. Oh my God, so many gems in there. I talk about them all. I want to try not to, but pick a standout that you were like, oh, it's hard, right?
It's hard. Laffy Taffy is just great. Girl, shake that Laffy Taffy. That Laffy Taffy, girl, shake that Laffy Taffy. That was a good one. And oh yeah, no, it's hard. I also reacted to London by Fergie because I forgot about that.
Yes, they played Fergie in gym when we would run inside, like if it was raining or something. Okay. And so that is like the soundtrack of gym class 2006 for me is Fergie. Also, I want to point out, I'm going to go a little different. All of these are bangers. Of course, I love the Beyonce jams, but I'm going to go a little alternative here. You're Beautiful by James Blunt had such a stronghold on the morning video channel. Like I would see that shit all the time getting ready for school. And I have it on my iPhone from having it on my iPod. And I still think it's a great song. Also, Bad Day was everywhere too. So shout out to them. Sexy Back too, obviously was fucking everywhere. Everyone just like thought they were bringing sexy back. And that's not what Justin said, but okay.
Indeed.
So moving on to movies. There's so many movies from 2006. I was looking at them as we were like getting ready to start recording, and Simone, you heard me like audibly gasping, like, "Oh my God, yes!"
Yeah.
So I had to exhibit some self-control, and so I'm just going to pick 5.
Okay.
But if you're curious, please go look at the bangers of movies that came out in 2006. So of course we have none other than the Pixar hit Cars, Life is a Highway Baby. I could not include it. And then we have a favorite Christmas movie. This is probably the only most recent Christmas movie that I love and have put into my rotation. The Holiday.
I was not expecting you to say that.
Really?
I thought you were going to say Elf.
Oh, no.
Huh.
I'm not a funny Christmas. I've seen Elf. I've tried to watch like Bad Santa.
Yeah.
I like a good, like sentimental Christmas movie.
Okay.
Excluding Home Alone. I think that's probably as funny as I go. But yeah, I love The Holiday. Oh my God. I can watch it right now. Christmas in July, baby. Failure to Launch. I had to include this because Matthew McConaughey.
All right.
Yes. I love this movie. This is one of my favorite rom-coms. And also SJP post Sex and the City. I like Sarah Jessica Parker. Some people don't, but oh well. Great movie. Dreamgirls. How could I not include Dreamgirls by Beyonce? Oh my God. The hold it had on me. And this movie right here just shaped probably like so much of my high school experience. The Devil Wears Prada.
Oh, that was a good one.
I could do a whole podcast on that movie.
Yeah.
But yes. Okay.
Well, if Stanley Tucci gets chosen one day out of the ring, or Meryl Streep, then that will be in the rotation.
I did. Meryl Streep was on my list, and that was my intention. That's the movie I first saw Meryl Streep in, I'm sure, or at least came to be like, oh, that lady's amazing. Who is that? And then also Stanley Tucci, Tucci Gang. But that's, that's my introduction to them. Of course, we know Anne Hathaway from Princess Diaries, so it's cool to see her like grown up and elevated. And then we also get introduced to Emily Blunt in that movie. So okay, shut up. Movies, September 2006, we're getting to El Cantante because the release was so weird with it being in a film festival and then later released. It was technically not in theaters with these movies, but anyways, Babel, the Queen, which I had to put because a la The Crown.
That's the one with Helen Mirren, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Stranger Than Fiction, All the King's Men, The Black Dahlia, Open Season, and I put The Last Kiss because Rachel Bilson is in that movie. OC alum, and was very much an obsession of mine in 2006. So, yeah. So, on that note, my favorite line, Simone, do you have some budget and box office numbers for El Cantante?
I sure do, Bria. And like you had said earlier with it being kind of released in two separate years and like times of years as well, it was actually kind of hard to, there like are different box office numbers that kind of are out there that conflict. And it was also hard to see like what the starting price of this movie was, what it actually cost to make. So I'm going to give you what some people say is that this movie cost roughly $6 million to make. So pretty low. I know it sounds like a lot of money, but that's like pretty low, all things considered. But, these are also a power couple in the music industry that they probably could record a lot of the movies and stuff on, maybe their own production studio. And, like they might have had a way to save on the budget of this. I'm not quite sure, but it did debut in the Toronto International Film Festival in September 2006. It was released in the United States and in it was only about like 530 or something movie theaters that it actually got released to. It ranked number 12 its opening weekend. So compared to the other movies that you had just mentioned that were released around either the same month or week, it ranked 12. Box Office Mojo clocks this movie, though, as the 28th highest grossing movie biopic of all time.
Wow.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. But the total international and domestic gross is 7.9 million. So if it truly costs about 6 million to make, I mean, the profit off of it is pretty low. But an interesting second fact is that the DVD was released pretty shortly after it was released in the theater. You know how sometimes it's like months and months? The DVD was released on October 30th of 2007, and it became a hit as a DVD rental and purchase. I think a lot of people just waited to buy this because it made 16.61 million just in DVD sales.
What?
Yeah, that's the bananas part.
Wow. And I'm sure it was bootlegged to death.
Definitely.
Oh my God, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I have half the mind to label like J-Lo the queen of like video release because remember, if you don't remember, a while ago, I believe in an interview, Puff Daddy was telling her that she was really big on, like, even though maybe her movies weren't these huge blockbusters, like she was doing numbers in video rental stores and on TV and stuff. So I think that's underrated because as much as movies being released in theaters are important, I feel like too, like the longevity of a film lies in people buying it or it being shown on TV. And
Mhm.
there's plenty of movies I saw in theater and never seen again. And I think like that's important that it has a life outside of the movie theater.
Yes. Yeah.
So, my favorite segment ever. What did Lil Raj think?
Okay, all right. So I would like to also play a little guessing game with this one because we know that Lil Raj is a fan of Miss Lopez and that he doesn't really criticize her so much as he does criticize the movies that she does.
It's kind of
So,
like us at this point.
yeah. So, Bria, would you like to guess how many stars do you think Lil Raj gave this? Or if you don't want to guess, do you want to just guess if he liked it or didn't like it?
I really don't know. Okay, I'm just going to guess 3.
3?
Yes.
Lil Raj calls
It's worse
this.
than that.
He
It's
calls
like
this
1.5.
El Cantante, Just Say No, the musical, 2 stars.
Oh, okay. 2 stars.
2
It's not bad.
stars. Some of the main points that I wanted to pull from him, and something that I definitely want to circle back and discuss in our later part of this episode, is that Lil Raj thinks that El Cantante is fairly formulaic. There's nothing really new or fresh about watching a movie about a drug addicted musician living a very tumultuous life. And that he feels as though there are 2 separate movies going on. There's a musical celebrating the cultural legacy from Lavoe's music career, and then a second movie that's going on about like a drug along, which is like a drug marathon according to Lil Raj. He does say though that the soundtrack would be worth to buy. Like if you like good music, if you like good movie soundtracks, definitely pick up El Cantante. It's great to listen to. And that Anthony and Lopez, Marc Anthony and Jennifer Lopez, do make a fairly convincing couple.
Oh,
And
wow,
that
really?
and that if you're a fan of the music, if you're a fan of Jennifer Lopez, you'll probably want to go see this movie. But if you're looking for something deeper, if you're looking for anything else, skip it. You're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, that's fair. Because, okay, I want to preface as we get into talking about our opinions of this movie. I wrote down this, like, after I finished watching it, it's my last note, that I don't feel like I have the right to really be critical of this movie, and mostly because of this is not my culture, this is not my history. I think it's American history, which is important, but I also just want to preface that like the way I view this movie is obviously going to be different than someone who is Latinx and has a fondness for salsa music from a nostalgic point of view and their culture and all that stuff. So with that, watching it, I didn't not enjoy it. I thought it was very interesting. It's very informational for me, especially because I had no clue who Hector Lavoe was, and very interesting. It was very interesting for me to see Marc Anthony acting, and I was very impressed. My main qualms with this movie is that I just feel like I didn't learn a lot about Hector and who he was as a person.
Yes.
And I feel like this movie is definitely a passion project. And Jennifer Lopez has said that in talking about the movie, which I can respect. But I feel like that shows because they don't really dive much deeper than like the persona of who Hector Lavoe was and this legend that he's become, sort of. So I, of course, the nerd in me immediately was like, ooh, I want to Google like, what's he look like? What does Poochie look like?
Yeah.
Is there videos of him performing that I could watch, or anything to get a sense of like how well they captured this? Because I don't know offhand personally of just having grown up and seen him and all that stuff. But I think that obviously when we talked about Selena, I think a good biopic will make you interested in a person, or at least give you a good snapshot of like, this is who this person was, this is what they accomplished. And I feel like we only got this is what they accomplished and this is what they struggled with, and not so much of this is who they were. So,
You know, we usually save this time when we talk about how we felt about the movie, how many pumps of butter. But I would like to, you know, address something that you had said about the
like, we can be critical of this movie based on our
yes.
knowledge of it and its subject matter.
Yes, thank you. That you and I are not coming from a place of discontent from like Latinx culture, salsa music, or anything like that. As I was watching this movie, I loved the music, and I was really, and again, just like you, I did not know who Hector Lavoe was. And but I wanted to fully watch this movie and fully be into it. I didn't start like researching and looking at stuff until the day after I watched it. But I appreciate that you prefaced us talking about the movie by saying that, because I think you're right. When I was watching it, I realized that like I don't have a too much of a say about, you know, how this movie makes me feel, because it will make someone else who might have grown up listening to Hector Lavoe's music feel very differently than how I do. And that I'm here just to kind of talk about Jennifer Lopez and her portrayal from her character and stuff, and then some of the things that I learned about the movie and the musician as well. So I think if we're coming at it from a place of just like it's purely just talking about like acting and movie production, because that's, I mean, essentially what the heart of this podcast is. So
yes. So I think it's very easy to summarize this film. We kind of meet Hector when he's like he is from Puerto Rico, and he is leaving and moving to New York, and then he gets very instantaneously like thrust into this budding salsa culture in New York, and immediately has success, like packing clubs, all that. His star is on the rise really, really fast. He meets Poochie. They're like instantaneously kind of into each other and very hot and heavy, very fast. And she's along for the ride. She's kind of like his pit bull in a sense. So she's very protective and his biggest fan probably, and also probably one of his biggest like crutches in a way. And then we're just really along for the ride of his career, and unfortunately his dabbling in drugs and how that affects his parenting and his and Poochie's relationship, and eventually his career at times in terms of him showing up late to gigs and stuff like that. But I watched we watched some interviews and some stuff, and one thing that was said was that, you know, Hector was just like, there's different kind of celebrities, and Hector was just like one of those people that people loved even though he was flawed. Like it was just like, he's like me too, like like he would curse on stage or something like that, and like, you know, it just humanized him to people, so that's why people loved him so much. So and then I saw clips of his funeral procession in New York, and that really reminded me of when the Notorious B.I.G. died, and they drove his hearse through Brooklyn, and like there's just a crowd of people, and it seems like Hector was loved just as much, if not similarly, as that, because there are just crowds of people, you know, paying their respects as his hearse drove by as well. So, I mean, there's not much more to that. I wish that in summarizing this, that there was more meat to the story of the tumultuousness of his life and his and Poochie's relationship. I think they touch on it, but it's like you're so close to just like a couple more digs, and like we'd be getting some like really good gritty kind of like stuff. And yeah, that's the summary. So did you watch the trailer?
I did.
I feel like this is a typical biopic music movie trailer where
Yeah.
it's just like, that looks fun, that looks interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think it gives away too much of the story, but you definitely know what you're in for in terms of going to see it.
Right. And I think absolutely for people who are fans of Hector Lavoe and salsa music in general would go see it knowing what was going to happen. I wanted to kind of go back to something you had said about when you were summarizing the movie, how like there's not much of a summary besides that. It's like it's literally a movie about the rise and demise of a very famous and unfortunately short-lived person who was great at what he did and very loved by his community. But unfortunately, I just didn't see that part in this movie. And I think that that has to do with how it was told, right? And so
Yeah.
it would be interesting if another biopic about Hector Lavoe could come out and have it be played through his perspective rather than being told as a mockumentary style by a deceased spouse, by Poochie. And but again, that's not necessarily a criticism about their choice to make this movie, because Jennifer Lopez was a producer on this, and I don't think that I don't think that that choice was wrong, but it definitely gives you one perspective and one side of a story, and
Yeah.
just a very, very small window versus like having it being through like Willie Colon's perspective, or just have it be more centralized on Hector Lavoe, rather than, yeah, you know what I mean? But like I'm glad, blah blah blah. I'm glad you brought that up. I just
No,
wanted
I
to
mean,
say that.
I totally agree. I think we could circle back to this just like after we get through the cast and maybe interview stuff. But I totally agree. I have notes pertaining to this. But the cast, obviously, we know Jennifer Lopez is Poochie, Hector Lavoe's wife. Marc Anthony is top billed over Jennifer Lopez, which, Simone, you were telling me was kind of like a little jab that the media were like, oh, throwing their way. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the movie is about his character, so.
Yeah.
But I would like to shout out my dude John Ortiz, who plays Willie Colon, because I was like, hey, he was very, very attractive in this movie. I loved his like whole musician like steez that he was on, his like hat and the curly hair. And yes. And I think overall the cast is really good. I also noticed Mr. Federico Castellucci from The Sopranos. So I was like, hey, wait, I know him. And then I was like, wow, he's not really Italian. Oh, betrayed. But yeah, so any notes on the cast outside of, oh well, we could take this time also too to talk about Marc Anthony, because he obviously, we're going to talk about J-Lo in particular later. So any thoughts as well?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think the cast is fantastic. And not only for the actors to be, entirely based and portrayed by Latinx actors and actresses, to also have production, directing, editing,
Yes.
screenwriting. It was all done within that community, and I think that that's really, really cool, and it definitely shows. I think that it's a really great perspective, of, I feel like I'm not saying that correctly, but I don't know, I just thought that that was really neat and special, and more fucking movies should be like that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because it's like, it's important that people of a certain culture, whether that be Latinx or Black or Asian Pacific Islander or whatever, or Native, that these people are able to tell their stories, how they've witnessed them and experienced them, and
Yes.
give that perspective to their stories versus having their stories told for them.
Yes. And
Which
it's obvious, like it's obvious that this is a very special story.
yes,
And that it's important, like you said, yeah, to tell it the way you want to
which
is
is
cool.
why I have a hard time being critical of this, because I feel like if I got to make a movie, like if I got to make an Aaliyah movie, and like it would probably be just like the Selena episode of this podcast. It would be a crappy, like 2 hours of me fangirling over just how amazing an artist she was. But very, very light on actually any kind of character development or like who she was as a person or maybe her struggles. And just like, so I can understand getting lost in the sauce of like, oh my God, this person was so legendary and they meant so much to me. And I want to show all this stuff and only having 2 hours to do that. And then maybe forgetting to put in some of the bigger, not bigger, but like deeper parts of their humanity as a person, of the things they struggled with that might not be sensational outside of his drug use and stuff like that. But like, just normal ass shit. Like, so, anyways,
No, and
that totally threw me.
it's all good. I think that too, that's like you said, that's one of the reasons why it's hard to critique this movie from an outsider's perspective. That it, in a way, this really is a passion project. That like this took 5 years to make this movie, to
Yes.
get the tapes from Pucci, to find the right director, to work with people who were personal friends or family of the Lavoe family. And they took a lot of time and dedication to make sure that what they were putting out there was going to be right and what they wanted. So I think that that's really cool.
Yeah. And so I think this movie really is just a celebration of Hector. I wouldn't say this is like an examination of Hector. So I think that's the big.
Absolutely. Which is why I think it's unfortunate that it's a celebration, but a really hard focus on the like negative parts too. But we can get into that later if you want.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I will try to remember that. Please bring that back up. But okay, let's talk about Mr. Marc Anthony himself, because
Okay.
I was highly impressed,
Yes.
and we just recorded a bonus episode for the Rebirth album. Jennifer Lopez is now married to Marc Anthony, but we totally talked about Jennifer and her demise.
Sorry. There's just so much going on in the current media. It is so hard not to talk about it.
But I will say that I am finding myself as we continue on this journey, and I'm sure as we continue, because they were married for like 10 years, throughout their marriage, as we touch on stuff. Under At the time when Jennifer Lopez got with Marc Anthony, I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, well, she could do like hotter. But as a almost 30 something, 28-year-old woman now, I totally can understand the attraction of Marc Anthony. And I think seeing him perform in this movie and having watched some of his YouTube performances by way of researching stuff for this, I can understand. I get it, J-Lo. And so I was very impressed by his acting, especially given that Jennifer Lopez really is the seasoned vet of the two of them. And then on top of that, given the dumpster fire of American cinema classic that was Geely, the fact that she would do another movie with a partner.
Yeah.
Kudos to you, Jennifer Lopez. But Marc Anthony he stole the movie, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
J-Lo's here, but like,
No, and for a movie in which he stars, like I think that obviously like the top bill is very well deserved. I think he did a great job. My only thing is, after comparing side by side what Hector Lavoe looks like, but I don't know if this like can be helped. Marc Anthony's just a string bean. He's a small man, and he's at least like 20 to 40 pounds underweight for this movie.
yeah.
But, it didn't like super distract me, because I also like, again, I looked up what Hector Lavoe looked like after, even though they do show some pictures of him and Pucci and the band and everything in like the ending credits and at the end of the movie. But I thought I did write down, do you think Marc Anthony is hot? Would you put him in the like ugly hot category, which I also think is like not very fair to say, but it's a man, so I'm okay doing it. And or is it like hot ugly?
I just, man, I don't, I forget the differentiation between ugly hot and hot ugly. He's
Like
the
you,
one.
I
Go
think
ahead.
hot ugly is like you're hot, but you're like you have an ugly personality. Like you're a piece of shit, but you're hot.
Oh, okay. He's
Is it?
ugly hot then. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know his personality to speak on it, but
Okay.
looks wise.
Okay.
And he's not even that ugly. It's just he has a very like unique kind of bony face.
It's
Like
very gaunt.
it's
Yeah.
very chiseled
It's very
and
chiseled.
it can work. But the man has swagger and that shit tops a lot of shit
Yeah.
if
He has
anything else fails
good
you.
stage charisma, good stage presence. He smiles a lot. He gets into the music. Like he's fun to watch as a performer, which I think can like make someone really sexy, right? Like it's like
Oh,
when all of a sudden
yes.
when someone picks up a guitar or like starts dancing, it's like, oh,
That was me with John Ortiz. Sorry, Mark, but I was like, oh, Mark's doing great. But I was like, woo, Willie Colon, hello. but yeah, so Marc Anthony, good job. Good job for him. Shall we move on?
yes, let's.
So I feel like as we just talk about this movie, we'll probably touch on interviews versus just strictly talking about interviews. So I think a great way to bring up a lot of that stuff is to talk about Jennifer Lopez and how this movie is compared to other roles. I think it's very easy for us to probably compare this to Selena, which I definitely have some notes of comparison. And then yeah, like what we thought about her acting choices as Poochie, and she definitely did some research. I saw some notes you had about that. So yeah, let's get into that.
Let's get into it. Yeah, I think I'm interested to hear what you say about the notes that parallel between Selena and this movie, as both characters and portrayal of people who legitimately existed. I mean, I think they're very different characters. They're
Oh yeah,
very
for sure.
like so they're just very different. Jennifer gave me a lot from this movie that I really, really appreciated. She looked absolutely stunning in this like late 60s, mid 70s vibe of this poofed hair, this baby blue eyeshadow, these big pumps, these big like high heel shoes and like sequin dresses. Like she just looks so glam, so 70s glam and so fabulous. Bria has been like crushing it in the collage game, and I was trying to put together a lookbook of just her like outfits in this movie. So mental note, we definitely got to do that. She's played characters who have been strong-willed, outspoken, but she served, and I don't know if it's, forgive me if this sounds wrong, but she served like Jenny from the block in this. Like there are a lot of her performance of Poochie seemed very trying to say that
No,
she was like Jenny from the Bronx. She was Puerto Rican Jenny from the Bronx,
she
and
was New York.
she was New York. Hector, what are you doing? Like she was so good, and I really, really loved like personality traits can be similar to other characters, but like in terms of accent and like acting choices, I think were very fun, and she did a really great job.
Yes, I definitely too. I loved the vintage look on her. I do think it spilled for her outside of the movie into her regular life too. If you
Yeah.
look at her during this time, she definitely has some big hair moments and stuff like that. Some very 70s glam moments. I don't know. I was here or there with her accent, and part of me is like, she's from New York. She definitely knows what she's doing, and I don't. So part of me feels like I can't be critical of that. I just feel like, again, like with was it Unfinished Life, where it's like in and out of, was it Unfinished Life?
Oh, with like a twang accent.
Yeah, like it felt
Yeah.
like it was here and there sometimes.
Yes.
So I'm here or there with the accent part of it. I do think that how aggressive Poochie could be, like threw me off, and I was like, ooh,
You know,
okay.
I just made this connection. Her character kind of reminds me of Cookie in that
Empire?
kind of.
The TV show Empire?
Yeah.
I could see that. Yeah. Very determined, knows what she wants, stands up for the people she loves, and doesn't really care what anyone else thinks. Like when Hector is in like a rehab facility and his sister comes and she's like blaming Poochie for why Hector is in that situation. And she's like, you go fuck yourself. Like that. I was just like, and in a fur coat of anything else. Like, absolutely. I would run away with my tail between my legs. I'd be like, oh my God, Poochie just yelled at me. But I was very impressed with like the heated moments that they played to her and Marc Anthony. And I saw an interview where like they was really getting into it, and Mark not broke, but he slipped up and was like, Jennifer, stop.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, they were acting. Like,
Yeah.
But I think they did that really well. And she carried that really well with him and made it believable. But I think too that this is probably to me, besides Shall We Dance, but this is probably to me one of her most abrasive characters, and not very nice and cute.
Oh no, yeah, she is not warm. Like, she's very motherly. You can tell she like loves her kids and loves her husband, but like she's cold. She's definitely she's definitely, when you were like, I would run with my tail between my legs if Poochie yelled at me. Like, yeah, she's definitely, if I was a fly on the wall in that studio and she came in hot one day, I'd be like, I'm out of here. Like,
yeah, she's the spouse that turns up at work and you're like, shit, Poochie's here. Like, get your shit and leave. Like, don't stick around for that tornado. I wrote that I can tell it seems like they had fun making this movie, and in stuff for the movie, it seems like that was the consensus. Like, everyone enjoyed making it. JLo said, I think this is like one of the only movies where everyone's like, oh man, we're gonna be done. Like, and we're sad to finish the movie. And I think that has to do with it being such a passion project and a reflection of a lot of, because this is such a Latinx production of, their culture, and enjoying putting forth all that effort and love into this movie. I really enjoyed too that I wrote in my notes when Hector and Poochie are kind of, in the throes of cuddling and making out, and there's another couple, and he's like, oh, I like that over there. And she's like, oh, you like that? And she's like, okay, well, I'll do that if you do him. And I was like, that is my philosophy on threesomes. Thank you, Poochie. Because if you expect me to do something, you definitely are doing something as well. So putting that out there, I thought that was hilarious. But like that ballsiness of like, Hector's this huge star. She totally could have coddled him and just been like, yes, baby, like whatever. But she was totally her own person for the whole time as well, and just was in love with him, and kind of enabled him and protected him too, but at the same time, like, she definitely didn't take shit from him either.
Right.
And I appreciated that of the character.
And also didn't find herself in this trap of like, woe is me, everything's my fault, and tried to hold Hector accountable for his actions and for the bandmates responsible to kind of like keep things going too. Like she said, like, I'm his wife, I'm not his babysitter. You should know that by now. And I appreciated that, who knows, not everyone knows the private lives of celebrities, and who knows how accurate this relationship was portrayed, and a lot of it was taken from the context of the Poochie tapes that they had previously before she died. But yeah, I thought it was a fun character to watch. I felt like they both very equally popped for me on screen.
Okay, so I have a question for you, and then I have a segue as well.
Okay.
Do you think Jennifer Lopez is too likable to be a dramatic actress?
Yes, I do. And I'm really curious how Border Town's going to be next week because we haven't watched that, and that's like a thriller drama.
Ooh.
Because I mean she's likable in enough. We definitely simped for her character. And for an unfinished life, it's like a also kind of a drama. But I didn't find those like I don't know, Meryl Streep, Julia Roberts, Viola Davis kind of like gut-wrenching things yet, and that's
Yeah.
not to say that we won't see them. I mean, who knows what Ice Age is going to bring for us. We
Yeah, like I just
but
obviously at this point,
it's a good question. Is she too likable and too sweet to be dramatic?
yeah, because at this point, I just feel like obviously she's got a handful of rom-coms under her belt. Um, I definitely feel like we see a difference in movie choices from her 90s work to her 2000s work. A definite shift as she gains celebrity. And I feel like that impacts also her ability to play a character and have us truly believe she's that person. Like, there are people I can watch and I'm like, this is them playing this character. And I felt like that with Selena. Like, I don't think I'm watching Jennifer Lopez play Selena. And that's just, I feel like probably nostalgia at its best. But I do now, like, I recognize that that's her, but I get lost enough in Selena that like I'm really into who Selena is, her story, and all that stuff. That's everything that's happening to her. And with this in my mind, I'm just like, this is J-Lo playing Poochie, like, or like, this is J-Lo pretending to be mad. And it's pretty convincing, but at the same time, forefront of my thought is that this is Jennifer Lopez, not that, ooh, Poochie is like, you know, I don't know. I don't know if that was coherent enough, but
No,
I
I get you. I get you.
I think there are actors who definitely, obviously, really dive into roles and get lost into becoming a character. And I don't necessarily think she's one of them. I think she can convincingly enough portray a character and do the job of presenting that character in a film, but I don't think we have a hard time separating her from her characters.
Yeah, I agree. It's not, some actors and actresses take it to such an extreme point of makeup, body manipulation, and
Weight loss, weight gain.
yeah, exactly, and even, famously known Daniel Day-Lewis for method acting and getting like crazy meta with their characters.
Yeah.
I don't think that's Jennifer, but I doesn't mean
And I
that.
don't expect that of her, but
No, I don't either.
I thought this could have been one of those roles where maybe she could have gone there in some senses of people being like, oh, like how I said she acting, like she acted, like put her foot in this acting. And yeah. Anyways, okay. I wanted to talk about, because you brought up other biopics of kind of couples in music and stuff, because I think also my biggest problem or critique of this movie, like you said earlier, is that we're getting Hector's story from Poochie's perspective. And I think that's an interesting way to tell this story, but I also think that, like, imagine, like in my notes, imagine if we got Selena's story from Chris's point of view. Like, we're missing out on a lot of stuff that, Chris only knew of Selena at a certain point in her
Right,
life, or
right.
to touch on other biopics like Sid and Nancy or
Mhm.
Ike and Tina. Like, if Ike and Tina was told from Ike's point of view, that's a totally different story.
Yeah.
And if we didn't get the background of Tina Turner growing up and her journey and all this stuff, and these are also very controversial, toxic relationships, drug, influenced, fueled relationships. Bobby and Whitney. I just feel like this movie is a celebration of Hector Lavoe, but it's also the story of Poochie and Hector more so than Hector. It's like Poochie's love letter to Hector in a way of like, this is why I loved him and this is why he was so great, versus a collective understanding of other people who knew Hector, his family, people he worked with and collaborated with, musicians and all that stuff, and having their perspective and their stories of him. It's very like probably what was in the Poochie tapes and maybe some other stuff, but a good portion of that probably is based on her recollection of things.
That's a good point. I mean, of the ones that you listed of biopics that are surrounding some form of celebrity couple, I've seen Sid and Nancy. I did not watch Ike and Tina. I appreciated where they were trying to go with this movie, but I think what movies like Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man, I'm thinking of like two very recent. I felt like with Rocket Man and Bohemian Rhapsody, we got a more entire telling of the history of how the band got started, the history of this person's relationships with critical people in their lives, and essential albums and concerts that they had. And Hector Lavoe sold out Madison Square Garden. He had huge record sales and album sales. I would love to have seen more elements of that piece of his musical career, and more about family life and personal life. I mean, the son was only in there for just a very, very short period of time. And for his tragic death to have been very kind of glanced over,
Yeah.
but in actuality, that death had such an impact on Hector and Poochie's life that I would have liked to have seen that dug into a little bit more as well.
I mean, we get a sense that obviously he's living the rock and roll lifestyle of sex, drugs, and rock and roll sans Poochie as well. And he's kind of absent as a father, but I think if we got more of that prior to the death of their son and then seeing the impact that it had on Hector, it would have hit a little harder. Like, it was unfortunate. You're like, what? Like, it seemed like just like, wait, what happened? Like, I had to be like, did I miss something? Like, what occurred? Because Poochie goes to a club and Hector's singing. And I think at this point his career is kind of waning because the club is just empty and he's there as a patron and they're like, oh no, you have to come up and sing. But he's there and she finds him and she is upset at him and storming the stage and trying to get to him and very upset. And she tells him in a very crass way that he doesn't have a son anymore. And you're just like, huh? And then eventually we see like what happens with their son. And then there's this scene where his son is trying to break dance and stuff for him. And he's like, look, I'm trying to watch like my son, like I'm trying to be here and spend time with him. But if we got a little bit more of that, like a little bit. Oh, also when Poochie comes home, and I just feel like it's too Poochie centered because the breakdancing thing is like her bitching at him as well. And he's like, I'm trying to be a dad. Like, and then the drug thing when she comes home and she's like, where's your dad? And he's like nodding out in the bathroom from, I'm guessing, heroin probably.
Yeah.
But and she's like, and then she's like, what are you doing? Like, the gas was on, something could have happened. You have drug paraphernalia just out. It's very like Poochie centered in terms of like, let's say we take Poochie out of that a little bit more, and we see Hector with his son, and then he goes into the bathroom to get a fix, and then he's nodding out, and then there's a scene where it's like the gas is on, the kid's just
Yes.
playing, and like Poochie's
Yes.
not back yet. Like it's just Hector.
Exactly. Yeah, no. I totally get you 100%. And that's kind of why I mean the comparisons that I can draw, at least with Sid and Nancy, it like does not follow too much about Sid Vicious and his life as a musician. It follows very much the weird and up and down relationship he had with with Nancy, and then their demise as well. So, but I totally agree with you there, Bria, that those scenes would have felt a lot different, and it would have given you a very more different feel of the film had it not been so much about like, my wife stormed in and saw this and now there's this big explosion and we're yelling and screaming at each other, and rather than, you like almost lose sympathy for Hector in that sense. I don't know. It's tough.
I mean, a little bit, because you're just like, you're totally absentee, like drug addict
Right.
dad and husband, and you're successful. So, and that's the other thing too with biopics and musicians who are doing drugs, is that, and Marc Anthony mentioned this in like I think it's like a special interview or behind the scenes kind of thing of El Cantante, and he's like, it's very easy. Like, he watches Intervention. We've watched Intervention together, but it's very easy prior to shows like that to just see drug addicts and be like, you've made a choice knowing that this could happen to you and these are the consequences, and you just need to, as he said, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and like get over it and get out of it. And I can only feel so bad for you about that. I think now with shows like Intervention and other shows, and seeing how people wind up addicted to drugs and seeing that it's all trauma related, and unfortunately they've chosen a very harmful way to deal with their trauma, that it's easier to empathize with them, because you're like, okay, I understand why this girl is doing heroin, because her dad left and she never felt loved, and she's just been in these rocky relationships. This one guy introduced her to heroin. If we got that kind of understanding of why Hector at like an ascension as like the biggest salsa singer in the 70s and 60s, why was he so willing to be like, hey, I want to try that? Like, that makes sense. And part of it too, I think, is that time, like, we didn't know what drugs were. Like, people didn't know that, doing coke and heroin was going to just like absolutely probably obliterate your life in a way. And so it was just like, oh, this is what fun people are doing. This is what my friends are doing. So I'm going to do this. And then you get addicted, obviously. But if we had a little bit more understanding of his addiction too, I feel like that scene also would have, and just his choices too of not being there and stuff, would make a little more sense. But I think that suffers from Poochie, which I want to segue into the Poochie tapes. They're a huge part, I think, of why this movie is the way that it is, and also in Jennifer Lopez's acting choices.
Let's get into it. Let's talk about that part. First of all, I think Jennifer had mentioned it was either in an HBO behind the scenes or some other like press junket for this, where once that Poochie had recorded herself in 2002, documenting just her and Hector Lavoe's life together, and died shortly after the films were, or the tapes were, turned over. And it was very important to Jennifer to have those tapes and to really get into the mindset of the character that she would ultimately portray, and to learn more about it, to study her mannerisms. And I don't know. Yeah, just like proud of how she made that, and it took her like weeks, couple of weeks to listen through everything and listen to them multiple times. And I think it's because of how the movie is told through the perspective of Poochie. It's a mockumentary style film, so that's probably why we don't see too much of the early years and formative years of Hector Lavoe. Kind of that's very different from Selena, where we see her a big chunk of her childhood, and Selena y los Dinos and the Quintanella's family and all that stuff. So it wasn't, if it was told through Chris Perez's perspective, then it would just be like to the point of when he auditioned for the band and up until her death,
Yes.
right?
Which
Like it.
is which, like, fans, I would love to see the series that Chris had in mind, because I think even though we get such a expansive part of Selena's full life due to her family being involved in the movie and now the series, we also are missing a huge connective point for a lot of fans, which is like her relationship with Chris. People want a love story, and they have an amazing love story, and by the family kind of not inviting him in to help tell her story both times. Well, the first time I understand because he's definitely probably still grieving, and he's kind of very soft spoken and quiet. So didn't want to ruffle any feathers. But I think with this series, they had an opportunity to also tell his story with Selena, especially since he wrote the book and all that stuff. But yeah, it's a completely different story from his point of view, and same with Poochie. I wanted to talk about that. This is J Lo's first role as a Puerto Rican woman, like that is out loud. Obviously, I am Puerto Rican, and I think her talking about that kind of hit a nerve with me, because she talked about how in her early career, it wasn't a big priority for her to, you know, I need to find Puerto Rican roles or Latin roles. Like, one, I'm sure she was just trying to work, and then two, like it's like I'm trying to make as many movies or big movies or good roles or get as good as roles as I can. So I want to be as diverse as I can be. And I think in my mind, in the back of my mind, there's a little voice that's like, why isn't she embracing her Latin heritage as much until we get to this point? And I think her marrying Marc Anthony is a big point of her
Definitely
really switching gears in that. But that happened to me. Like, I think one, it's like what you're trying to achieve, what you think success is. And for a lot of Americans, it's like the opposite of, probably if you're a person of color, the opposite of your culture. It's, American white culture. And so you try to deny your culture in a way, and not deny it, but like just feel like that's not who I totally am. Like, that doesn't define me. And you want people to see you as a person too, not as whatever your culture is and then a person.
got it.
But,
Yeah.
she also talked about how it reminds her of like when you grow up, and I think most people can relate to this, whether you're a person of color or not, but when you grow up and you hate the music that your mom plays when she's cooking, or whatever habits your parents have and stuff like that, or you hate the food that you're like, mom, casserole again, or like, we're having beans and rice again. So you kind of, you're so used to that stuff, and then you grow up and you move out and you start to live your own life, and then going home and having those things become like wow, I miss this. Like, and then as you get older, you start to appreciate those things in a different kind of way of like, this is who I am. This is the foundation of like the person that I am, because this is what I grew up in. And instead of shunning it and being like, why can't she make something else? Like, I got to a point where I still can't kind of am at this point, but like I got to a point where I was like, I'm tired of my parents making like soul food. Like I'm tired of eating gravy and beans and rice and cornbread and greens and fried chicken, fried pork chops, like all this shit. Like I'm tired of eating that every Sunday. Like, can we do something different?
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
Well, that's too damn bad. That is like a Black grandma to the T. Like you're gonna eat what I fucking make and you're gonna like it. And but that feeling of kind of trying to find your way and not be defined by your culture, but then also coming full circle and realizing how important it is, our differences and the different ways we're all raised and the different ways we all grow up and all that stuff and how that plays into who we are. So I think at this point, we're definitely getting a Jennifer Lopez who is embracing her Latina side fully 110% versus like a 90%. And not that she was ever ashamed or ever was like denying it, but it is definitely full on full to me at least. And yeah, okay, shut up.
Well, I think that that's the point that I was trying to make earlier of her acting choices in this, is that that's to me why I felt she really portrayed or put out like Jenny from the block. Like she really put her effort of portraying a strong-willed, loud, proud Puerto Rican woman, and it just seemed so different from some of her other characters that she's played. Like, yes, she's played characters who are strong and independent and have good, quick comeback lines, or are like sexy and seductive in that way, so that makes them a little bit more like edgier and powerful. But although she was drop dead fucking gorgeous in this role, it wasn't like exuding this sexual tension to show her power and pop on screen. And I think that a lot of that has to do with how proud and connected she felt to choosing a role like this.
And speaking of hot and sexy, there's two things I want to talk about.
Let's go for it.
Number one, because I'm just going to mention this and we can gloss over it. When she comes home and Hector's like, "Where you been?" And she takes off her coat. She's like, "Oh, I was at my sister's house. Tita is staying over there." And the dress the outfit she is wearing, for a second, I was like, I understand. Like, why are you wearing that to your sister's house? But the dress she's wearing is amazing. So, chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss.
2, the start of this movie. My first note is like, bathtub J-Lo? Question mark? Exclamation point? Question mark? Like, a la New York going Beyonce? Like, like bathtub J-Lo? I'm wondering, for me, if bathtub J-Lo surpasses J-Lo on a beach. Like, I was pleased. I was like, I don't need beach J-Lo. Bathtub J-Lo is here. I'm loving it. She was in the bathtub twice in this movie.
And so many bubbles. And it's a deep tub. It just makes it so seductive and luxurious. And that there's like a little gold plate tray next to it that's gonna have some like a nice candle, a little bump. And there's just something really hot about it. I'm wondering though, so Poochie's a smoker, and I know Jennifer in her real life is very cognizant of what
straight-laced.
She's very straight-laced, and she doesn't, she might have champagne like every now and again, but yeah, she doesn't drink. She definitely is not going to smoke, which, side note, how is that going with Ben Affleck? But I wonder, I don't think she smoked in this movie, because I was watching her and she holds a lot of it. There's a light, but I don't see a lot of like,
oh yeah,
like where it's very clear, like, Leonardo DiCaprio like smokes in a lot of his roles, and it's like very clear that he's like puffing and dragging. So I don't think she actually smoked for it, but there's something that's like so fucking sexy about it sometimes.
No, it really is. And my mom's a smoker. I've hated it ever since I was a kid, and definitely like the assemblies about not smoking, the commercials, they brainwashed my brain where I was just like, never spilling facts to mom, like, what's in a cigarette, like all that kind of stuff. I did question vaping when that first started. I was like, oh, maybe this is like the way I could look cool but not kill myself. Psych.
This cigarette tastes like Fruit Loops and cotton candy.
Psych. So, but it does look so cool. It's such like a badass thing to do on camera, and just like,
there are sometimes where smoking looks disgusting, but like curly hair, blue eyeshadow, tight shimmery dress, brushing some cocaine off of your husband's lap while you have a cigarette in your mouth, like she looked so good. Anyways, all right, so and speaking of which, because we know smoking's bad, because we know that culturally this movie means a lot, Bria, do we think that some of these roles in movies and choices hold up to today? Could this movie be released in 2021 and still have the same effect and mean the same thing?
Yes, I do. I feel like this could be a jumping point of at least pitching another shot at telling Hector Lavoe's story, in terms of being like, look, this film did this. If we did this again in a different way, it could have similar, if not better, success. I'd be interested in watching another one. I do think that Jennifer Lopez and Marc Anthony's star power definitely helps with the success, especially like the DVD success of it.
Yeah.
So I feel like you have to have biggish names, maybe, or
I could see. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, or it just has to be like a really well done, true film festival movie of like. It could be a not that well-known actor, but like they have to go hardcore character like method for this to.
I didn't really know of the people who I'm going back to Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man. I've seen Rami Malek before, but I felt like he definitely got bigger after playing Freddie Mercury. And then I didn't know the actor who played Elton John, but I thought that really helped because I wasn't like doing that thing of like I can't see past Jennifer Lopez playing Poochie. Like you're not. So you're like a lot more open-minded, and like even the Han Solo movie, like that person who in my opinion I think is like super fucking hot, they weren't trying to go for this like Harrison Ford replica. They chose someone who they didn't really know, did a fairly decent job. Anyways, I agree. I think that this could be a jumping point to, and I think that definitely enough time has passed to make another movie. If we're casting someone of cultural relevance and who is also like relevant in current pop culture, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda could possibly, you're shaking your head, but he could do a decent job not making this movie or producing it like a musical, but just playing the role of Hector Lavoe. What?
I understand the genius that is Lin-Manuel Miranda. So I say this again as someone who has bitched about how people don't respect J-Lo. I just want to say I respect him. Like Moana soundtrack, that's my shit. I think I haven't seen Hamilton because it's so fucking huge that it was just so hard to.
Do you think he's overrated?
No, I don't. I feel like he's like, I'm trying to think of off the top of my head, like my first comparison is like he's like Tyler Perry, where it's like, do you have to be in all of your stuff at this point? And but like I don't love him as an actor and a performer himself. I think he's a genius and a creative in a creator role in terms of bringing stories to the forefront and stuff like that. But like perfect example, and we have different opinions on In the Heights. You really loved it, and I was just like, oh, I see why people weren't like that excited about it and stuff, or that thrilled with it. But like his character in the Heights, I was just like, that didn't have to be him. Like, it could have been anyone else. Like, because he's not the central character. He's just like this kind of side character, and you're like, oh shit, it's Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's like what do you call those things?
Cameos,
a cameo,
a
but like
walk-on.
no, like when Pixar puts like shit from other movies in movies, and
Oh, an
an
Easter egg.
Yeah, it's like an Easter egg of sorts, but a
Well, I
person.
mean, to be fair, and we can totally cut this. To be fair,
I don't want
like,
any Lin-Manuel slander.
well,
I'm
I
not
think
prepared for that fight.
no, but no, and I totally respect and appreciate your opinion. I mean, the original cast of In the Heights came out over 10 years ago,
Oh,
and
see, I didn't even know that.
yeah, it came out on Broadway and had a fairly short-ish run, but that came out before Hamilton, so it was in, and
Oh,
so
wait, I kind of
Lin-Man,
knew that.
he
Yeah.
was
Okay.
the like main character. He was Usnavi. And so because he also like writes, directs, like he does so much other stuff too, that to me it kind of makes sense that he would like put himself in the play that he's creating, or he like writes these roles that he would really love to play, and so he's too old to play Usnavi, one,
Yeah.
but number two, like he you know, to me it's like it makes sense if this is like your musical to sprinkle yourself in there.
Stuff like, it's like, I don't know. We're gonna cut this. It's just not. I wouldn't choose him to play Hector Lavoe.
That's fine.
I think the singing part, like I think Marc Anthony sang for this movie
Oh,
for
no,
the
yeah.
songs.
And again, I loved the parts where he was performing. I'm just thinking if this movie were to be recast and remade, I'm just thinking who else could play?
Yeah. I would prefer someone who's relatively unknown, and it would be fine to me if they lip sync, but I don't know how Hector Lavoe's estate exists and the availability of his music to do that. So at that point, yes, you might have to look into re-recording stuff for the movie, but yeah, we're just we're gonna respectfully disagree on that, and that's okay. I think it holds its own in 2021, especially because it's a time period piece, kind of in a way. I think it's obviously not a 2006 occurring movie, so I think it's fine. And the way it was shot too was shot in a way that I think evokes that time really well to this day. I kind of wrote a note that gave me Scarface vibes, especially when she's like trying to give him the Coke in the car and then, spills it and all that stuff. Oh, I wanted to talk about earlier, you said that the movie focuses on a lot of dark stuff and like a lot of his problems, especially drug related stuff. And I just wanted to also point out, like in watching interview stuff, that a lot of his music was like that, like where a lot of salsa music's like, let's go out, let's dance, let's party. His music was like, let's talk about life. Like,
Yeah, it's
and
deep.
it's
There were parts
yeah.
of the movie where there were lyrics, popping up on the screen and stuff of the songs that he was singing. And I mean, they're deep songs. They definitely talk about his internal conflicts. And the movie points this out at one point, but Hector Lavoe tries to see like a high priestess, and he goes to rehab. He really does try to make these efforts to quit vices like heroin for sure, but like drugs, cocaine and marijuana and stuff like that. And he tries his best to seek out help. Addiction's a real tough son of a bitch, but you can tell in his lyrics that he's a super conflicted person and a hurt man. Like he's very torn.
Yeah, which just it reminded me of like there's this TikTok series I've seen of someone translating Spanish songs, and the translate, like I think you could say anything in Spanish and it sounds amazing. So like the translation is like, what? Like it's so, some of the songs are so random or just like, and so seeing his lyrics, I was just like the band and the music itself, sans lyrics, just makes you want to dance. It's infectious in that way. I think salsa is. And so like you're like, oh, okay, this got a nice groove to it. And then like the lyrics are on the screen and you're like, oh, death, what? And then like I'm glad I don't speak or understand Spanish that well to be like listening to it and be like, hold the phone, like, am I dancing to the most depressing ass song ever? Like, but in English, Hey Ya by Outkast, if you read those lyrics, that song is deep. And
thank God for mom and dad for sticking two together because we don't know how. Yeah.
And at some point he's like, no one's gonna fucking care what I'm saying because the song and the beat and all that stuff is just so infectious and lively that like no one's really gonna peep how deep this song is. And I haven't until this year, and that song's like how old now? So I mean it's so true, but definitely having that in your face I think reflects a good part on him as a person, and I just wish the movie dived into that more in terms of like I would like to know how some of these songs came to fruition, like, and maybe there are events that inspired them and stuff like that. So that's going to be maybe my leaving note on that.
Okay. So I think that that's a good place to kind of to leave and end off. Overall, it sounds like we felt similarly yet different in how Little Raj felt about this movie. So Bria, I'm curious, how many pumps of butter would you give this movie?
I am gonna give it 2 and then 1 more for Latinx greatness and magic, because I think that this movie meant a lot to the people involved in making it, and I think they did a good job in terms of making it. I just think that there's also another story that could also be told as well. So I would like to see that story as well. But other than that, like, passion project, bravo. So 3 pumps.
3 pumps. All right, I love it. I will see your 3 pumps and raise you 1 extra half for me. I'm going 3.5 pumps on this one. Only because I kind of like Lil Raj said, if you're going in expecting anything more, you're setting yourself up. I didn't go in expecting, like, I didn't really know what to expect. I knew I was going to learn something, which I did.
Yes.
And I knew that I was going to be moved by the music and enjoy the singing and music piece of it, which I did. So because I didn't go into it as a huge diehard Hector Lavoe fan or a huge diehard Marc Anthony person, I went into it as a J-Lo fan now, and for the sake of this, and honestly, for the sake of this podcast, I never would have picked this up and watched it. I would have watched La Bamba first. I would have watched like a bunch of other music biopics before this one. But I'm glad I did, and I enjoyed it. So I'd give it a good 3.5 pumps.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I didn't go into it either with any expectations. I just think that maybe I have high expectations for biopics because I'm nerdy in that way, and I love
music's
music.
Your wheelhouse. Like, you're really, really passionate about that, so I get it. So,
I mean, in us kind of starting recording and all that, like, I had Hector Lavoe playing, so he might be in my rotation with Selena now, but I too nerd out on getting to know more about a figure in terms of these types of movies. So that is I guess that's where I take my half pump back. It's just like, oh, we were so close. I wanted to know more about who this man was as a person, but okay, just a little extra salt maybe then. Little Salt Bay action on the popcorn.
All right. Well, then, and speaking of seasoning, then Did you have any, when you were watching this, did you have any like snacks, cocktails come to mind?
I did not. I totally did not even think of food. There's not a lot of food in this movie.
Uh,
I'm gonna go with give me your best Puerto Rican meal. Definitely
mm,
probably some rice and beans in there
okay.
somewhere. I believe Bacardi is made in Puerto Rico. So maybe some rum
Okay.
based drink of some
Okay.
sort. But yeah, I totally spaced on that. I know this is your wheelhouse, so please
Food
amaze
is
me
your
with a
wheelhouse.
well, the
It's
snack and the
truly.
cocktail for sure. I'm sure you looked up a cocktail to make.
Yeah,
You did.
I did. I did. Because originally I was like, maybe like a Cosmo or a martini, like something fun to hold when you're in the club,
Mm,
like listening to that. I'm like putting myself in the
with the
perspective if
sig in
with
the
this
same hand.
sig, yeah, sig and martini glass, delicately holding and just having a really good time at an old nightclub in the 70s would be like, that was my original thought. For snacks, I'm just going like a good restaurant style warm basket of chips with a good chunky medium salsa. Because I'm white, I can't go too spicy. I like a good medium, but I'm not so much like pico de gallo. Like I need it a kick up, but I don't need my butthole to burn.
My
Um,
favorite is Chevy's chips and salsa.
yes,
So
I
basic,
literally
but
was going to say Chevy's chips and salsa, and like Chevy's is, anyways. Chevy's, please sponsor us. If you ever listen to this, we love your chips and salsa. For the official cocktail, so if I'm not going Cosmo and Martini, there is something called a salsa sunset, which is a savory margarita. And it
ooh.
is like a margarita version of a Bloody Mary.
Oh
And
no. I
so I
can't
know
do Bloody Marys,
I don't like Bloody
micheladas.
Marys. So this is definitely a savory margarita, but it's strained salsa juice, tequila, lime juice, salt rim, and agave. You can also cut it with a little bit of tomato juice. Some people make it by making their own bell pepper juice, but I fucking hate bell pepper, so I'm not going there. And then you salt the rim.
I would like to understand savory alcohol because I don't
I
like.
don't get it because I look at Bloody Marys and I'm like, okay, an excuse to drink at breakfast. I get you. I'm more of a Mimo girl if I'm gonna have booze at my breakfast,
Just
but
saying.
I'm just saying.
It's such millennial mimosa.
But I look at, yeah, because I didn't really see my parents drinking mimosas at all. I honestly didn't really know what they were, get into them until way later and like way past of legal drinking age to get into them. But my parents will fuck with a Bloody Mary, and I would see them, especially on vacation, getting one, and I'm like, why are you drinking tomato juice with this tacky celery stalk and this like, and they let me take a sip and it's spicy, you wouldn't like it.
It's spicy.
And I took a sip and was like, ugh.
Ugh.
It's even when I think I want something like that, I remind myself you're not gonna like it.
I
Just
think
go
the
with the
most
mimosa.
savory I'll go is I really want to try a dirty martini, but I feel like that
The
is
olive.
yeah, like I believe dirty martinis, they have more olive juice than usual. And then they have like stuffed olives. So like olives with like blue cheese or something in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I stole that from Real Housewives of New York because at one point they were ordering the shit out of those. And I was like, I want to try that. That sounds classy.
Is that a Luann move?
Yeah. Oh my God. Her, Sonia, Ramona, definitely dirty martini bitches.
Love
Also,
it.
but lychee martinis are sweet. But I would love to try one of those too. But yeah, I do. I don't think I've seen Black people drink V8 juice, but I don't think I've seen anyone I've been related to fuck up with a Bloody Mary. I do think that they have definitely pitched them better now that they will add like something random as hell, like a grilled cheese sandwich, like on a skewer,
donut, bacon, a mini burger.
yes, a slider. Like you had me with the slider, like, but I can't do the tomato, like the acidic, no.
Yeah.
I can't. Like alcohol's already a hurdle to get over, so I need it to be like sweet and interesting, not like something
what's gonna make this vodka taste even more spicier? Some tomato juice.
But okay, so you gave us a drink that you wouldn't drink.
I'd give it a try for the sake of the eventual cookbook that we're going to have to make of all of these cocktails. Yes.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. And to the people who have stuck with us so far, please come back for another episode of the great value version of Inside the Actor Studio, which, Simone, we have to watch Jennifer Lopez on Inside the Actor Studio.
Yes, we do. We need to make time for that. And I just wanted to say thank you very much to an old friend from elementary school, middle school, high school, Alana Poet. I know that's not your last name anymore, but you had DM'd me on Instagram and said, I've been listening to your podcast. I love it. And I said, great. I hope you like the Walmart version of podcasts. And she goes, hey, cut yourself a break. I like Walmart. So you know what? Thank you, Alana. That was very, very kind of you.
There's a market for everyone.
And just like that, if you like us enough if you like Walmart, you guys, please stick around. Take another deep dive down this IMDb rabbit hole with us as we discuss Jennifer Lopez and the suspense thriller Border Town.
Yes, and on that note, if you've got nothing better to do, go figure out a theme to watch a bunch of movies you've never seen.
I'm your host, Simone, and please subscribe to this blessed mess. Leave us a like if you're into it.
And I'm your host, Bria, and also your social media runner. So follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all those fun things at Roll Call Pod. And it would be awesome of you to also wipe off those 3.5 pump of buttery fingers and give us a review and let us know what you think about this blessed mess that we call a podcast. And on that note, this has been another episode of
Roll Call and cut. I'm going to come to you. I'm going to sleep at your house. We are going to stay at Chevy's till closing time. I want to do it. I want to have endless chips till closing.
They're like, are you guys going to order anything, or you just want another basket chips?
No, we can split a pitcher of margarita and live off of chips and salsa. We'd be okay.
Okay.